I want to welcome each and every one of you today to the presentation of our Community Needs Assessment for Adult Literacy. And it's an exciting day. It's very exciting. And to be involved with a foundation that's working to engage the community, leadership in removing the barriers to economic prosperity, and involving the creation of awareness and education about the issues that really impact our city and our region is just exciting. And I want you to know that this event that is taking place right now equally excites me because as we coordinate businesses and government and community leaders and nonprofits and other entities to identify these problems and create workable solutions in the area of poverty, homelessness, and workforce development, we're actually doing the same thing as it relates to literacy, because literacy is a critical factor in individuals being able to achieve their goals and fully participate in communities. So as I work in these areas and as we as a foundation do, literacy always rises to the top, especially adult literacy, as we look at the economic development of our city and our region. And the ability to increase the number of adults with high school education, with a path to post-secondary training, is critical, again, to our economic development here in Nashville, but also the region. And as we position ourselves for continued economic growth and increasingly competitive global and knowledge-based economy, this assessment that we're going to share with you today provides key recommendations for improving adult education and increasing the potential work of our workforce. And as I look across this room and around this room, I actually know I'm speaking to the choir. And I know you're already feeling a sense of excitement because this is, I think, you'll see a bold step in moving forward in a collaborative and cohesive way, something that each and every one of you all hold dear and true. But before we move on, we'd like to recognize the sponsors that made this assessment of today's presentation possible. And the Chamber of Commerce, being very involved in this initiative, always wants to thank our pivotal partners. This is a partnership at the highest level of the Chamber, programs and events. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Middle Tennessee, Cassidy Turley Commercial Real Estate Services, and Community Health Systems. And we have to give a huge thanks, and you will hear from them in just a few minutes, to Dollar General Literacy Foundation, because they're the ones that commission this assessment. And if you do know the definition of commission, it also means paid for it. And we just appreciate so much all of the work that Dollar General does in this area. And you'll see today that this is another great piece of work. We also want to thank Scott Snoyer and Fast Signs in Antioch for helping create signage for today's event. And you wouldn't have found your way into the room had it not been for Scott Snoyer. And I would be remiss if I didn't give special thanks to the adult literacy providers who do this work every day and who are so helpful in the research phase of this study. And some of the people, if not all, who were involved in the research study was the YWCA, Nashville State Community College, Metro Action Commission, Davidson County Sheriff's Office, Tennessee Foreign Language Institute, Nashville Adult Literacy Council, Martha O'Brien Center, Christian Women's Job Corps, Opportunities Industrialization Center, which I call OIC, Salvation Army, Nashville Area Command, and Youth Connections. I'd like for you to now join me in thanking these outstanding organizations for their support. Our first speaker is Susan Lanigan. She's the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Dollar General Corporation and serves as a director on the board of the Dollar General Literacy Foundation. Please join me now in welcoming Susan Lanigan.
Thank you, Howard. Hello. Okay. Mayor Dean, the Nashville Chamber, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As Howard said, my name is Susan Lanigan, and I am with Dollar General. I'm also a proud member of the Literacy Foundation. I will say thanks to Deneen and her great work. Literacy Foundation for Dollar General does some great things. But I'm here today as a citizen and business person who believes adult literacy is one of the most important challenges facing our country, our local community, and both America's and Nashville's business development efforts. Dollar General has a long history of supporting adult literacy and basic education, so we've been paying close attention to this issue for a long time. I've been asked to share with you an overview on the national need in this area and to highlight the impact of the issue on businesses from a large employer perspective. Let me start by sharing with you just a little bit about our company. Dollar General is the largest discount retailer in the United States by number of stores, with more than 8,800 stores in 35 states. We're a 70-year-old company in the Fortune 250 with almost $12 billion in revenue in 2009 and more than 80,000 employees. We strive to maintain everyday low prices on the basic consumable needs of our customers, many of whom have low and fixed incomes and are striving to make ends meet. In 2009, Dollar General created 4,000 new jobs, and during 2010, we will create more than 5,000. As we open 600 new stores in neighborhoods across the country. Many of those jobs provide a great point of entry into the workforce. However, because of the evolution of the retail industry and the increased use of technology, even those entry-level positions require competent literacy and basic technology skills. Our store-level employees have to be computer literate. They have to be able to read and understand complicated store layouts and business plans. We are not in a position to hire folks who can't read. But adult literacy is important to Dollar General for other reasons as well. Our co-founder, J.L. Turner, was functionally illiterate with only a third-grade education. His family witnessed the tremendous burden his inability to read created for him as he launched his business, and that formed the basis of the company's long legacy of support for adult learners. Today, we see more than ever the pressures that low literacy skills can put on our business success and productivity. More importantly, we see how the adult literacy challenges in our country impact our customers and employees in particular. We see the burdens they face as a result, and we want to help. In the last 15 years, Dollar General has raised $60 million for literacy efforts and given away more than $40 million through our grants. We've helped more than 2.1 million adults improve their literacy skills and provided more than 60,000 literacy referrals to individuals who would like to learn to read, prepare for the GED, or learn the English language. We also underwrote the work of the National Commission on Adult Literacy, which released its findings and recommendations in a 2008 report entitled Reach Higher America, Overcoming Crisis in the U.S. Workforce. While we are proud of our investments in literacy and basic education, we recognize that the staggering number of adults in need of basic literacy and education assistance continues to grow. It will take the federal government, state governments, and an increased awareness across the nation to initiate the tide of change needed to give back the American dream to the American people and to those arriving in our country looking for opportunities to improve their lives. The first step to giving back the American dream is recognizing the tremendous need to improve the literacy skills of our adult labor pool, those beyond the reach of the K-12 school system. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more than 139 million people in the United States workforce. Only 2% of the annual workforce comes from the current year's high school graduating class. The rest is found in the existing labor pool. Thus, we must invest in the adults that are already in the workforce to maintain our global competitiveness and to increase their employability and skills. According to the National Assessment of Adult Literacy, 30 million American adults read at the lowest level of literacy. Another 63 million can perform only simple, basic, everyday literacy activities. This represents 93 million adults in the United States, or roughly 30% of our population, that read at the two lowest levels of literacy. Now, I know that we've become desensitized to numbers and statistics, so let me put this statistic into context. According to the last census, 93 million exceeds the total population of the following states combined: New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Ohio, Delaware, Indiana, and Michigan. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, more than 26 million adults in the United States do not have a high school diploma or GED. According to the American Council on Education, only 493,000 adults passed the GED last year. 1 out of every 8 people 16 years old or older in Davidson County is illiterate. And at the state level, 13% of Tennesseans, more than 577,000 individuals 16 years old or older, were estimated to be illiterate, according to the National Assessment of Adult Literacy. So even though we live in one of the most powerful nations in the world, 1/3 of our population cannot read well enough to succeed in most work environments. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 63% of the 18.9 million new jobs created during the 2004 through 2014 period are projected to be filled by those with at least a bachelor's degree. According to the Employment Training Administration's report on why America needs an educated and prepared workforce, 90% of the fastest growing jobs in the United States require some level of post-secondary education or training. We need more educated workers now more than ever. During 2009, the United States lost approximately 4.2 million jobs. For many of those affected by the unemployment crisis, this has resulted in an increased desire to advance their education and job skills training. However, as you all know, due to the limited amount of funds invested in adult education, approximately 70% of the adult literacy and education providers in the nation operate with a waiting list. There is a huge gap between the need of individuals seeking to enhance their skills so they can meet employers' needs for more skilled workers, and the funding and access to quality adult education programs that can help them. Simply put, if we continue on our current track, over time, Dollar General and other businesses across America will not have the skilled workers required for growth and competitiveness. Even worse, we will continue to grow economically apart or even polarized as a nation, and key segments of our population will be left out of the new workforce. Sadly, the United States is the only member of the 30 free market countries that comprise the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, where the current generation is less educated than the previous one. This fact presents a serious threat to our economy and our continued position as a global leader. To maintain our country's ability to compete globally, we must address the issue of adult literacy and basic education. We can no longer allow the silent epidemic to inhibit productivity and diminish our standing in the world's economy. The inability of so many of our adult citizens to read, write, speak English, and to perform other vital, basic work and life tasks at a proficient level threatens the social fabric of our nation, as well as the vibrancy of our local and national economies. Winston Churchill once said, "It's no use saying we are doing our best. You've got to succeed in doing what is necessary." Ladies and gentlemen, we need to do what is necessary here for the more than 93 million adults in this country and the more than 500,000 folks in the Nashville area who need to learn to read and write at a proficient level, for the businesses who need to fill jobs with skilled workers, and for the generations who follow us who should inherit a country that is fulfilling its promise, not retreating from it. This challenge in the Nashville area requires the partnership of the city, the state, the chamber, the business community, the nonprofit sector, and hopefully the federal government as well. We must increase available access to programs for adults looking to strengthen their educational skills and employability. We need to find funding for quality programs. We need to increase our referral network for adult education services. And we need to ensure that adult literacy and basic education remain high on the local, state, and national agenda. Today we're here in partnership and with hope. And we extend a sincere thanks to the Nashville Chamber Public Benefit Foundation, the Mayor's Office, and all the local literacy providers for expanding opportunities for adult learners in our communities. We appreciate your commitment to addressing this issue and look forward to working with you to create solutions that build a stronger local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce our second speaker. Mark Hill is the Chief Education Officer at the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. He joined the Chamber after serving on the staff of Mayor Bill Purcell, and I had the distinct honor to work with Mark during my time as a council member with the Metro Council, and I know him to be all about education and not just about K through 12, but about all people being educated in this city. And you'll hear his excitement in just a moment. While serving as first director of the Mayor's Office of Children and Youth, Mark oversaw the creation of the office and was charged with promoting collaboration and coordination of the city's resources on behalf of Nashville's children. Since assuming his position at the Chamber, Mark has worked to lead the business community's efforts to champion community support for the needs and issues facing public schools. I want you to now join me in welcoming Mark Hill, and he's going to give us a very exciting report. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Howard. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, and good afternoon. And to Susan and the Mayor, Dean, thank you for joining us. I'm going to walk you through the report now, and of course, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a hard copy for you on your way out, and it'll also be available online. First of all, the report team. This was a team effort, and it took that. First and foremost, the Dollar General Literacy Foundation, as Howard said, not only did they fund this study, but because of their work nationally, they really are experts on this issue, and so we relied on the expertise throughout the course of this study. Of course, the National Public Benefit Foundation and the Chamber were actually commissioned to do it. We then contracted with NMG Advisors, and Art Rebevic is here today, who also brought in the Neighborhood Resource Center, Tiffany Israel and her team, to create this project today. There's two versions of the report available. The one that you're going to walk out with today is, if you will, an abridged version, a printed copy, and then the full version is available on the Chamber website. The difference is that the full version has a lot of maps, in particular maps of all our surrounding counties, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. To sort of let you know the methodology, how do we go about creating the research material, the source material for this report? We did over 35 interviews, and that's policymakers, that's advocates, those are agency providers, and even learners themselves. Two focus groups with learners informed our work. We, of course, did a thorough literature review. We looked at all the state and local reports. I'll mention two in particular that were particularly helpful. In 2004, the State Comptroller's Office produced a report called Teaching Tennessee Adults. And nationally, a report that Dollar General Literacy Foundation was involved in. It's called Reach Higher America, a report of the National Commission on Adult Literacy, and I would encourage you for further reading to consult those two sources. And of course, we looked at census data, the census, the 2000 census being the most recent. Of course, we're in the midst of right now the 2010 census. I saw yesterday where Davidson County's return rate was only 63%. So if you haven't filled out your census form, that's your homework for today to make sure we get that response rate up. But of course, the Census Bureau also does what's called an American Community Survey. It's a sample-based survey between the decennial census. And we looked at the 2008 three-year average, which is the most recent data that we have. And of course, we looked at local data and mapping. This is where the Resource Center and NMG really helped quite a bit. They mapped the current client load, the wait list of several of our providers in Davidson County. They also mapped the 211 calls to United Way, folks who are calling 211, seeking these services. Where did those calls originate from in the county? We mapped that as well. And I mentioned the learner population. You can't have a needs assessment without talking to folks who are receiving services themselves. We had two outstanding learner focus groups that really brought some ideas and some challenges to the forefront of this study. When we talk about the learner population, we're talking about really three groups of people for the purposes of the report. One is adult basic education, and there you talk about literacy and proficiency. And these are folks who basically can't read or comprehend above an 8th grade level. You also have a learner population, there's overlap here among all three of these groups, around GED preparation. In other words, what are those adults that don't have a high school education, a diploma or a GED? And that is a set of learners. And then we have, of course, a growing English language learner population. The issues here are similar but also different. A lot of these folks are seeking to gain English proficiency to get a GED, but also it's to be proficient so they can be gainfully employed, that they can live and circulate through our community and integrate into the fabric of Nashville. So those are the three groups we looked at. So as we look at the statistics around those groups, and we look at people lacking basic prose literacy by county, this is our regional view. Of course, in Davidson County, 52,000 people 16 years or older can't read. The good news, if there's good news, is that that number has gone down. The most recent number we have is 2003, and in 1992, 17% of the population fell into this category. That's now 12%. So we are seeing some improvement there, but it's still a very large number. Rutherford, 15,000 fall into that category. That dropped from 13% in 1992 down to 10%, so a little bit of improvement there. Another large surrounding county, Sumner, again, 10,000 fall into this category. Not much change between 2003 and 1992. Percentage-wise of this population, Robertson actually has the highest percentage of its county falling into this category at 13% in the region. As you look at the population without a high school diploma or equivalent, this is the second group of learners we talked about. Again, Davidson County, 63,000 people ages 25 and older do not have a high school education in this county, or about 15% of that age group. In Rutherford, it's about 18,800, or 13% of that age group. Sumner, 15,000, or 15% of that age group. Robertson, again, the highest percentage of this age group do not have a high school diploma in the region at 21% of folks 25 and older in Robertson County do not have a high school diploma. The lowest county percentage-wise in the region is Williamson, has 6% of those adults 25 and older do not have a high school education. If you totaled up all 7 counties, that's Davidson and all the surrounding counties, you've got 126,591 adults 25 and older who do not have that basic high school education. So basically, it's 50-50 split. 50% of those folks are in Davidson County, 50% are distributed across our adjoining counties. We move then to a map in Davidson County of what this population looks like. Again, these are a number of people aged 25 and older without a high school diploma. Red is the highest concentration or greater number, then blue is the next highest, green is the next highest, and then yellow and gray is the rest of the continuum. You can see that in South Nashville, right here, there's a concentrated pocket. West and North Nashville here. And then you see Madison in the northern part of the county having significant need, and also the Neely's Bend area having significant need. And this is a Census 2000. It'll be interesting to see this map and how it changes as a result of the 2010 census. Here are English language learners, and the big takeaway out of this graph is not just the number, that is large, but the rate of growth of this population. This is a 53% jump just from 2000 to 2008, and these are the population of residents over the age of 5 who speak English less than very well. Just a huge, tremendous growth in that population and the need. As we look at the map of this group, of this population, this is where it's distributed. As you might suspect, South Nashville, the corridor between I-24 and I-65, heavy concentration, and also this inner city corridor between I-40 and I-24, so the Murfreesboro Road area. We're also seeing pockets over here in West and North Nashville as well. And again, we expect this map to change quite a bit with the new 2010 census as well. This is an example of one of the surrounding counties that you'll find in the full report online. This is Rutherford County, and you see I-24 basically through the middle of it. Again, red is the largest concentration. These are the numbers of adults 25 and older without a high school diploma. The concentration is mostly in their urban areas. Here's Murfreesboro, here's Smyrna and Laverne corridor right here. Each county will have 4 maps in the online version of this report. You'll have a number of folks 25 and older without a diploma, but you also have a percentage, so you can get a sense of density. You'll have then those 2 same maps for the English learner population as well. So all 4 of those maps for every surrounding county are in the online version. This report makes it very clear that adult literacy is a workforce development imperative. In the past, on this issue, oftentimes it was sold or pitched as it's the right thing to do. It's helping people help themselves, and that remains true today. That's very much true. But it's also much more than that. What we would argue now, the current imperative is that this is an economic development issue. This is a workforce quality issue, and our progress or our lack of progress will affect this region's future prosperity. Why is that? Labor force is growing more slowly. As we know, baby boomers are retiring at a higher rate than they're being replaced by qualified workforce, and that's a national issue, not just a Nashville or Tennessee issue. Education levels are dropping, unfortunately, of this new cohort of workers. Out of all the OECD countries, which is basically the developed nations, or the most highly developed nations, our country is the only one whose next generation workforce is less educated than the previous generation. And that's something we've got to turn around. There's a higher demand for advanced skills in this new global economy. Workers are finding that less than a high school diploma puts you at risk of being unemployable. The greatest growth in demand is for those that only have a high school diploma but a 2-year or a college degree. That's where the job growth is now and in the future. There's a qualified worker shortage in the Nashville region, which is driving the urgency of this issue. The data in the next several slides comes from the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce Research Department. It's the most current and Nashville region-specific data that is available. And we looked at our 10-county region, so it's Nashville and Davidson County, it's the surrounding counties, but it also includes Murray County and Montgomery County as part of our workforce development region. And the Chamber did 10-year job growth projections, and that 10-year projection started in 2007 and ran through 2017. For that 10-county region, the Chamber projects 120,000 new jobs. However, we also project that in our current pipeline, in our current education pipeline, we'll have 97,000 projected workers to fill those jobs. That leaves a cumulative 10-year shortage of 22,874 qualified workers, or 2,800 jobs unfilled per year if we don't change that dynamic. That's a huge issue for the future prosperity of our region. Let's also talk about return on investment, because this is a business case for getting serious about adult literacy in this community. The value of a diploma in Nashville, and again, these are Nashville-specific numbers thanks to our Chamber Research Department. You can earn an average of $20,000 without a diploma, versus getting that high school diploma means a $30,000 raise, essentially, averaged over those workers. You average that difference over a lifetime, we're looking at $423,000 per worker is the difference that a high school diploma can make for each person. And then we talked about the importance of a pathway, not only to that high school GED or diploma, but then on to advanced education. You add a 2-year degree to that, and you're adding another $400,000 a year to that worker's paycheck over that lifetime. Let's talk about income loss from the class of 2013 dropouts in metro schools. This is using the Alliance for Education formula with our local numbers. Number of ninth graders right now in 2009, about 6,500 ninth graders. So let's take that class. Let's apply the current graduation rate, which is about 73%. So we can project that on that rate, we'll have 4,700 successful graduates in the class of 2013. The non-graduates will have about 1,784. You multiply that 1,784 by the $423,000 they could have earned over their lifetime by being high school graduates, and you total that up, $755 million is the difference, just from one graduating class in metro schools. So you can see that this is serious business. Here's the average earnings by education band. Again, these are Nashville-specific numbers. You can see the jump between below GED and having that high school education. It jumps further with some experience or some advanced training, and then a big jump to a 4-year degree. It's critical that we create that pipeline of educational advancement for our workers. Talk about service delivery, and this is described in the report, and Howard mentioned some outstanding service providers that we do have in Nashville. We are blessed with that to have a diverse community of providers. Most of the larger providers are profiled in this report. The history of that work is that it's often been done in isolation and often under-resourced, both in funding and in staff. The commitment is there, and Howard talked about some of those providers that are doing this work every day. So there's a variety. There's also dispersed need in the community. What we found through our research is not just concentrated in one particular part of town, but that population of adult learners who need services is continuing to spread even to the periphery of our city. We're seeing that it's no longer concentrated in the urban core, but areas such as Antioch, Hermitage, Madison, and West Nashville are all gaining in need. Another issue in the service delivery category for Nashville is a transition in the federally funded services. That's mostly through the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. They contract with providers to cover each of Tennessee counties. It's a county-based system. In Nashville, they had contracted with metro schools. And in fact, in most of Tennessee's 95 counties, that contract is with the county school system. Due to underperformance, that contract was terminated with metro schools in 2009, which created a service disruption. Nashville State Community College, since that time, stepped up and has now got the contract with the state of Tennessee, and they are in the process of ramping back up that service. But that's a huge funding stream that got disrupted in 2009. I want to especially mention, though, that YWCA is a second contracted provider with the state of Tennessee, and they've been consistently providing services and really holding up through that transition. So that's been a valuable strategy to have more than one contractor during this time. But that's a serious transition issue here in Nashville in this past year that we need to be aware of. Here's a couple of slides to illustrate the variety of providers in our city. The example of one of the provider maps that are found in the report, here's the Nashville Adult Literacy Council, which is the largest group that is serving really that basic proficiency and basic education need. And they served about 1,700 learners this past year. You can see where those learners are distributed. Again, strong concentration here along the periphery, especially in the southeastern part of the city, but also here in this area along the river in West Nashville. Here is the YWCA. They are fairly dispersed across the city in their service delivery. So again, they are striving to meet the need across the city in a variety of different ways. To give you an example of a very neighborhood-based service delivery system, we'll go to the Salvation Army. This is their client base. It's all in their neighborhood, which is basically the Dickerson Road corridor close to downtown. We talked about the 211 calls to United Way. These are folks who are calling 211 asking for services and receiving referrals and assistance. You can see where these calls are coming from here in 2008. Again, pretty widely distributed, with strong representation again from Antioch and Southeast, but also in Madison, West Nashville, even close to the Cheatham County line, and we see growing need in Hermitage here. This illustrates the point about why the contract was changed with the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Again, metro schools had it until 2009. Now it's transitioned to Nashville State Community College. And this is the enrollment, which has been a precipitous decline over the recent years for Davidson County. So we need to see if we can get that back up to, again, try to begin addressing the need. Our other counties here are here at the bottom, Sumner County being the second largest provider. You see also Rutherford right here. They've sort of interchanged in being the second place, and then the other counties are down here below. So report findings. What are the bottom line findings from this report? First of all, we sought to create consensus and understanding around the need in adult education. And again, it's 52,000 people in Nashville 16 and over who can't read. It's 63,000 and 15% of adults in Nashville without a high school diploma. The question is, what should a reasonable service target be? Well, the state of Tennessee, in their contracting with counties, set sort of a 10% goal. In other words, 10% of the eligible population they would like to see at least served. Now, whether or not 10% is the right goal for Nashville is a whole other set of questions and issues. But if we did apply a 10% goal in Nashville's case, we would want to see at least 6,300 learners served every year. The need in ELL, again, is striking and it's growing. 38,000 speak English less than very well in Nashville. What should a reasonable service target be? Again, if we just pulled that 10% target of that population and applied it just to the adults, because the school system by and large takes care of the kids, you have a goal of 3,000 English language learners served every year. But again, is that 10% goal right? Is it ambitious enough? Maybe not. On service delivery, We've seen some recent improvements, and we talk about this in the report. Despite this history of sort of working in isolation and not communicating back and forth, Alignment Nashville has a grade 16 through 24 committee that recently has been focusing quite a bit on the providers and how to better communicate and coordinate. And so that is taking place in the past 6 to 9 months, and we're very encouraged by that. It's an excellent start. There's a tremendous need for consistent data and reporting. We're clear about the need in this report, but it's incredibly difficult to provide a community-wide picture of who is doing what, how much, and how well. We haven't got to the point where we actually have one entity or agency that's helping to paint that picture for us so that we have an action plan, a roadmap to move forward on this issue. There's a lack of communication and coordination. And again, this is starting to change, but traditionally providers don't talk to each other, not because they don't like each other, but because they're busy working on their particular piece. They have more than enough to do. In fact, they have waiting lists. Just about everybody does. But they also need to share best practices and make referrals to other agencies when that's appropriate. There is a need for more geographic coverage in the city. You saw the 211 calls and how that need is continuing to disperse. But there's a tension here, because there's also a desire under best practices to create more leveled courses and leveled classes. And providers will tell you that there is a huge range of needs when you have a classroom of adult learners. You may have someone who is just a few credits shy of getting that GED or just really close to being proficient, alongside sitting next to someone who really needs intensive help, perhaps years of services. And the question, can you create classrooms that are levels that you can group learners together and target that instruction more effectively? Well, if you're spreading out your services to try to meet the geographic need, you've got small classrooms, and it's almost impossible to create those level classrooms unless you do some creative things like partnerships with other agencies and pool together resources. Those are the kind of conversations that need to happen in the years ahead. The role of technology is going to be huge, and it came up again and again as we talk to policymakers and providers. Online and software-based learning can potentially address accessibility issues. It's clearly the trend of the future in learning. We talked about Metro Schools opening a virtual high school this August for the very first time. However, which software to use and then a strategy for making that software available across providers needs to be developed. And there's no one leading that charge in this city. There's a huge need around advocacy and awareness, and that came out time and again in our research. This issue of adult literacy needs urgency, and it needs champions. And historically, adult education has been secondary to K through 12, and no one has doubted the necessary and focus and the priority that's placed on K through 12 education. Clearly, you fix the pipeline and help solve this issue for the future, but also you've got this large group of adults who need to get re-engaged with the education system. But there's been a lack of champions at the state level and, frankly, at the business community, except for Dollar General, who's been leading the charge not only here locally and in Tennessee, but nationally. And when you don't have that advocacy and awareness piece, good ideas don't get momentum. And throw out one of those ideas. In the 2004 State Comptroller's report that I referenced earlier, there was a recommendation around developing a state tax credit for employers who support their employees going back to get their GED, but that never received any follow-through. It never got any follow-up or momentum out of that. The lack of capacity inhibits also the promotion of services. A lot of times this issue is talked about as sort of a silent issue. It doesn't get the spotlight, doesn't get a lot of attention. Well, providers don't have a lot of marketing resources. And even if they did, they're a little reluctant to promote their services because they've got a long waiting list. So do you get the word out in the community about your service even though you have no capacity to meet that need? That's a huge challenge and tension. But it does add up to this visibility shortfall in this issue that we have. From the learner perspective, we learned a couple of key things. And there are two learner groups focused by the Neighborhood Resource Center. And you'll see more of these in the report. First of all, it's hard to know where to go. If you're a learner, there's no sort of go-to place where you can get information. If you happen to know about United Way and 211, that's great. You get directed to some providers. But that's not well known in the community yet, so we've got work to do there. Learners want more flexibility, and it should come as no surprise. They need to meet the demands of work, of family, and limited transportation. So they need different kinds of classes, different times of the day, different days of the week. Learners also talked about more staff development for those who are doing the teaching, whether they be paid or volunteers. Now, they appreciated the staff and the work, so there wasn't an issue about lack of commitment, lack of hard work, and they certainly felt value, but they did recognize that the teaching staff needs to be constantly developed with the latest techniques in order to be highly effective. And so now we'll close with some recommendations from this report. Number one, prioritize the expansion of ESL classes in this community. That's a huge need, and it's the rate of growth, again, that is driving this recommendation. Providers are trying to do that, they want to do that, but it's got to be a clear community priority to make it happen. Coupled with that, a full geographic coverage that we talked about earlier, and perhaps through partnerships to solve that level class problem as you continue to meet the dispersed need. Second recommendation is begin a regional dialogue tied to economic development around this issue. The model has been county by county working on this in isolation, and we would make the case this is a workforce development issue, which is a regional issue. We need to convene in the next 12 months a group that includes Davidson County, but also all our surrounding counties. Bring the providers together, but also bring the local economic development officials from the city and county, from the chambers of commerce, all across this region, and have this dialogue and create some momentum toward advocacy. And the third recommendation, which really is the most important out of this report, the most immediate need, is identify a central coordinating entity for adult education and literacy services. Someone whose job it is every day to work with the providers in the community to outline the need, to create consistent reporting, to paint that community-wide picture of this issue that can help this community move forward and address the need. We don't have that in Nashville right now, and it's desperately needed. What would that coordinating agency do? Some possible roles, and we just threw these out in the report as ideas. Again, creating consistent data collection and reporting is a huge issue. It's hard to go for funding as an agency if you can't help create that community-wide picture and it's consistent across agencies. This group could provide policy expertise to elected officials as they consider changes or improvements in this area. The agency ought to lead communication and publicity efforts and take a leadership role in that effort. It could help establish a consistent interagency referral process, again, with providers helping to shape that. Another idea, and this is maybe a long-term idea, is developing an assessment tool for program effectiveness and community goals, not as a punitive measure, but as a way to, again, create that broader picture of where are we headed and how are we getting there. Could recommend learner software. It could study best practices across this country and then recommend something that we can apply across this city. It could coordinate and provide professional development to agency staff, whether they're volunteers or paid. And a final idea, it could help assess the impact of some of our school-based adult ESL programs. There are schools who on their own are providing ESL services to parents of their students. And we could look at those models, this agency could, and recommend best practices and replication of that model to other schools. Those are our recommendations and the synopsis of our report. And like I said, you'll be able to get a hard copy of it on your way out. The full report is available online at the NashvilleChamber.com website. And to introduce our last speaker this afternoon, I'll turn it back over again to Howard Gentry. Howard?
Thank you, Mark. I want to thank you, Mark. I said before he came up that it was going to be exciting news, and it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information that probably some of you already believe you knew. But now we have it in a document, and what's exciting is the fact that, I had an opportunity to be involved in a poverty reduction initiative with the Metro Action Commission, social services, and many agencies in this room today. And we were able to create a plan collectively to reduce poverty in the city of Nashville. And so it's a plan. But what's exciting is we have a mayor who understands the importance of these issues. He understands the importance of the needs of the underserved communities, and he doesn't shy away from it. And so the fact is that he is here today. The fact that he is here today is an example of the fact that he is not shying away from this tough issue. Carl Dean is the 6th mayor of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, and his priorities as mayor are education, public safety, and economic development. He also works diligently on efforts to sustain and improve Nashville's high quality of life. Today's program touches on two of the mayor's priorities, education and economic development. The mayor has been a strong advocate for these issues and understands that they are deeply connected to one another. And I think after he speaks today, you'll see that he has a deep passion for all of Nashville. And I'd like to present to you the mayor of Nashville, Carl Dean.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. First, let me thank Susan and Dollar General for commissioning this report and also for their commitment to making literacy and education central to their company's outreach in our community. I also want to thank the Nashville Management Group and the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce for conducting the assessment and drafting the report. Illiteracy is a topic that does not really receive the attention that it deserves. There are various reasons for why this is the case. As shared in the report, it's believed that roughly 12% of the residents of Davidson County lack basic reading and comprehension skills. The impact illiteracy has is not only on the individuals, but on their families and on their ability to have job security. And for me, and for all of us really, we must consider the impact of illiteracy on economic development. It certainly has a long-term effect on our city's vitality and our city's health. A literate and educated workforce is essential to having a stable tax base and to promote positive growth for a city. A workforce that can meet the needs of not only existing employers, but also those companies that are considering relocating to Middle Tennessee and to Davidson County. But beyond the economic impact issue, we should not shy away from the moral issue that is involved in illiteracy. And that is why today I am willing to announce and want to announce my commitment to work with the Nashville Public Benefit Foundation to determine what is the appropriate agency to help us develop a more coordinated approach in terms of providing services, collecting data, and raising public awareness in Nashville and in the surrounding counties. We are really uniquely positioned in terms of the time right now to do this on a regional basis. Just in the last year, the mayors in Middle Tennessee, the mayors of the counties, the mayors of the cities have come together and formed the Mayor's Caucus, where we talk about lots of different issues, but issues that we hold in common. And clearly, from the information that's been provided today, this is an issue of regional concern. And as you look at the information, when you get the hard copy, if the chart's in there comparing Davidson County to the other counties, you can see why it's of particular concern to me and should be of particular concern to you as Nashvillians, because it's pretty staggering the way, in terms of how we need to address this issue much more than the other counties do, but they need to address it too. So I think going forth today, the word I want to get across to you today is that we will be champions of this issue in Nashville. We will take it on. It's vitally important that we do. I mean, it's clearly something that is going to have an impact on our city's future, an impact on our children, and an impact on the long-term health of our city. We will take it on by designating the proper agency, giving that agency the resources, bringing to bear the resources not only of the public sector, but of the private sector, because this is the problem that we all must solve, not just private or public, but both together. And that I gave my commitment to bring this issue to the regional bodies and work cooperatively with them so that we can have a regional response to this problem. But as you look at the study, I think you'll agree with me that it's incumbent upon Nashville to take the lead in this. Number one, we're the biggest county, but also it is clearly more important, I think, to us long-term than any other county. I thank you all for your hard work on this, and thank you all for coming today.